Welcome to DEMAN Live. Thanks for being with us. We're doing a great thing tonight, conversation with Duke alumni who work at the New York Times on this Monday night. Tonight, we have an unbelievable group of people. First of all, I'm Michelle Charlesworth, and I'll be moderating tonight. DEMAN Live, rocking it tonight. We have an incredibly talented, hardworking, accomplished group of panelists tonight. All of whom are Blue Devils who are working in New York City. So this is a New York thing. I also work in New York. They work for the New York Times Company, which includes the New York Times, The Athletic, and Wirecutter. And I graduated in 1992, and I'll be sort of trying to point us in some directions. I put my public policy degree to work every single day. I was econ, poli-sci, public policy as the mothership. I anchor on Saturday morning for 3 hours, Sunday morning for 3 hours at WABC TV, Channel 7 in New York. And then I also, and that's live from New York City. And then I also report 3 days a week. And I never know if I'm in Connecticut or in the 5 boroughs or in New Jersey if I'm live. So it's a little bit crazy. I do want to thank our co-sponsors tonight for this event, making it happen. DEMAN, first of all. Amy, thanks so much for helping me with all of this. The Chronicle, which I still check in on all the time. It's fantastic. Always will be, always has been. Duke New York and DEMAN New York. Also, please note that we are going to be recording this Zoom so that people can look at it later on and maybe check in on some things anytime you want to stream on DEMAN Live. We also have, in addition to the all-star panel, an opportunity for people who are watching and listening to ask some questions. So please go ahead and type your questions in the Q&A if you're part of our live audience. And if you are, then thanks for being with us. It's fantastic. First of all, I want to introduce our panelists. Eric Bishop, who is going to pop up here in just a second, deputy editor, news desk, the New York Times, very busy person, never stops working. Maureen Farrell, business reporter, the New York Times. Hello to both of you. Thanks for popping up. Ashley Harding, executive director, growth and product marketing, the New York Times. Kashmir Hill, technology reporter, the New York Times. Aaron Krolik, interactive news reporter and developer, the New York Times. David Perpich, publisher, The Athletic and Wirecutter. John Scher, managing editor, talent development at The Athletic. Thanks for being with us tonight. The conversation is going to start with a question for David, who was an econ major at Duke. First of all, congratulations on being named publisher of The Athletic, which is an online sports news outlet, hugely popular, acquired by the New York Times Company just weeks ago, early 2022. For everybody here, what does that mean? If you're a publisher, what are you doing every single day? Do you ever have some time off? How are you connected to what's going on? And how is everything going to change when the acquisition is official on April 1st?
Thank you, Michelle. There's a lot in that question, so I'll try to break it apart a little. And actually, news, which is we actually already closed the transaction. It is official, and very excited to be working with John, a fellow panelist who came over as part of the acquisition. At the highest level, just the publisher role, just practically speaking, what it means is that the two co-presidents of The Athletic report into me, and actually with Wirecutter, the GM and the editor-in-chief report into me. And so I think ultimately, very practically, just the editorial operations and the business operations roll up. The way I think about my job and what my responsibility is, both at the Times and vis-a-vis The Athletic and Wirecutter, is really ensuring three things. One, that we have an incredible report and product that our users love, whether that's getting product reviews or following your favorite teams. That's making sure that we have the right kind of strategy and business strategy to make sure that the business can thrive, so that we have the money we need to be able to invest back into the journalism and the product. And then last but not least, making sure that we have the right culture, the right talent and culture, where people can come and do their best work. And so those are the three things at the highest level that I think about as my responsibility as the publisher. day to day, that's working closely with the leaders of both Wirecutter and the Athletic to make sure that we have the right strategy and priorities, that we are focusing on the right, that we have the right talent, that we're actually supporting that talent in the right ways. And very practically, from an editorial perspective, making sure that I feel comfortable with where the standards are editorially, as well as thinking not just about, the floor, what are the standards, but like the ceiling, what's possible. And a lot of what I'm doing now with the acquisition of the Athletic is thinking about ways of bringing in, not just editorially, but on the business side as well. How do we take everything that we've done at the Times that we think could be applied at the Athletic in best practices, whether it's, visual journalism or thinking about the subscription funnel and bringing that over. And so it's all of those things. And one last thing I'll say, and then feel free to follow up with a follow-up question if you want. A lot of what I'm doing right now is honestly really a transitional moment too, because with the acquisition, the Athletic is about 600 plus people and has over 1 million subscribers. And so we've been thinking about how do we actually bring the Athletic in and continue to support the incredible product that they've built and the incredible team that they've built, and both bring what's great from the Times over, but also kind of support and keep the Athletic running as it is now. And so a lot of my time is managing that intersection and thinking about how to build those right bridges.
And how big is the Times? So 600 people versus what?
My God, I should know this number off the top of my head. I want to say it's something like 5,000. So
Oh my heavens.
Much bigger.
Right, much bigger. And I know that a lot of us always say, too many cooks in the kitchen, but it's a totally different animal. It is a different animal, and it makes for great cooking. Has anybody been hired recently besides yourself who knocked your socks off in terms of, something they did to get in the door? And if we can come back to that question, and I can go on to the next person.
One thing I'll say that I'm very excited about is somebody actually from the New York Times newsroom, Claudia Cabrera, came over, who helped lead audience at the Times, or was part of the leadership team of the audience team in the New York Times newsroom. And it's come over to Wirecutter, to the Athletic, to help us figure out how to do everything that we want to do. So very, very excited about that.
And so she was able to do a lot of different things very quickly and pivot, just like you, I guess.
Yes, he just joined recently, but
Okay.
but that's one thing that stands out for sure. One person.
Yeah. Just ability and being able to make things rock and roll very quickly and laying that out.
Yeah, so much of what I think it takes, and I was thinking about this with a question that may come up later of, kind of like what's challenging and rewarding about the job, but so much of what it takes to thrive at the Times is real deep expertise in what you do, whether that's reporting or thinking about how you use data and analytics, run the coverage, or how you build products. But also, we're a very collaborative culture, and working together and knowing how to work well with people and influence them, listen, and Claudio's best in class in that. So very excited to have them there.
Oh, very good. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks so much. And again, congratulations to you. Wow. Amazing. Very big job. Kashmir and Aaron. And now I was talking about what people majored in, because it's kind of interesting. Kashmir, you studied Italian and European studies, and Aaron studied engineering and computer science. Please talk about the project that you reported on together for the New York Times, focusing on privacy and technology. There's so many different ways, scrappy and not, to become a reporter and to break stories and to do things that are kind of like, that are going to draw people and bring them back again. I did love your piece, including small details like the fiery Doritos that were thrown in the police officer's face, I think. Anyway, talk a little bit about your project, and also what kinds of tips would you give budding reporters to stand out?
Sure. So this project, well, it started with a story about a family who started getting attacked online, had posts that were popping up about them that accused them of being thieves, pedophiles, sexual deviants of all kinds, kind of various crimes, and none of it was true. And they had no idea who was doing it. And so it ended up being this huge group of people, like hundreds of people that had all come under attack by one person, somebody who, had some mental health issues, who felt wronged by this group of people. And so Erin and I had worked together on this story of, kind of unraveling this mystery and figuring out why she did this, how she did this. And Erin wasn't named on the first story because as part of my reporting it out, I came under attack by the woman, as did my husband, that I was, a plagiarist who had slept with my boss to be promoted, that my husband was a drug addict and a sex addict. So anyways, when the story came out, Aaron was not named on it, even though he had done a lot of work on it. And we both were wondering, what is the ecosystem that supports attacks like these on these sites? That there are basically a bunch of sites that were kind of devoted to basically destroying people's reputations and really catered to attacks like this. And so I'm going to pass it over to Aaron. Aaron's so interesting. So I'm just kind of like a normal, boring reporter, but Aaron wears like multiple hats at the Times, and he just had a brilliant idea for how we could explore the ecosystem of these sites.
Yeah, so the idea, it's very mysterious when we saw all these posts pop up about Cash, and there were all these ads next to all of her posts that said if you clicked this link, and then you could send some money or Bitcoin or whatever to a law firm, and they would take the posts down. So we thought a good follow-up story would be to try to figure out exactly how the sites were connected to the removal sites. And yeah, I have a engineering and science background, so I think very much in terms of the scientific method. So we wanted to run our own experiment on how these sites work. So we wrote an AI to generate fake posts, and the lawyers said we couldn't do that. So the only way that we could post our own content and see how it spread across sites, because our hypothesis was they were copying content from site to site to get more takedown money, was the only legally approved way was if I wrote about myself. So we put about 5 posts on the site.
So Aaron slandered himself for journalism.
And then we used software to track how the posts spread, and we embedded metadata so we could see which sites copied from which sites, and it turned into a pretty cool project. But I think that Cash and I have worked on a lot of really cool projects over the years, and it often very cool and interesting things happen when a great reporter and somebody who has a bit different training team up, and this was a very exciting example. But there's been a lot of stories.
And you went out there and said that you were a big loser. Are you still a big loser? I mean, it was terrible. I was crying for you.
Having the New York Times publish your name on the front page does wonders for your SEO. So that's not the first thing that comes up anymore. But yeah, if you search Aaron is a loser, you'll get a lot of links. Aaron Krolik is a loser.
And it would have cost about 20 grand to scrub everything, right? The bad guys were the same people.
Yeah, we used like internet forensics and linked the sites to the cheater sites, and yeah.
Right. So breaking stories is the number one thing I would tell reporters. Just if you're thinking about it, it's going to be interesting. If you're like, hey, what if? Hey, what's this? Hey, what's that about? Hey, what is that over there? It's always going to be interesting to somebody else. And what would your advice be to people trying to do this and get paid?
Yeah, I think for journalism, the great advice that I got early in my career was to find a niche and become the expert in it. And so for me, I ended up going to graduate school in journalism at NYU and focused on privacy. I started a blog called The Not So Private Parts, and it was all about the intersection of law and privacy and technology. And it was my graduate school project, and now it's become my whole career. So I think if you can really find something, like try to go where the herd isn't, and something that you're really interested in and that you can become the expert on. I just definitely encourage that for anybody that's interested in journalism.
Yeah, I agree. Going where people are not is, I think, great advice. And there's a lot of people in the Times and elsewhere that, got hired after writing a really great blog post somewhere. There's a reporter at ProPublica that I work with who noticed that FCC complaints looked like they were all AI generated, and he was a lawyer at the time, and now he's an investigative reporter at ProPublica. Somebody else I work with at the Times who wrote the dialect quiz. I think that started out as a graduate school project, and now it's like the most read story of all time on the New York Times website. So yeah, I think that's really great advice. Is if you're interested in something, you should pursue it, and don't let not being at the Times stop you from publishing it.
What about failure? Don't worry about it.
I'll say at least, I probably spend 60 to 70% of my time on things that don't pan out.
Right. Kashmir, what do you say to that? Don't worry about it.
On failure specifically, I mean, I always think, I guess it's failure. I mean, yeah, there's definitely going to be things that don't pan out that you think are there, but not being afraid to ask dumb questions. I think that just gets in the way of people finding out things sometimes. And as a reporter, if you can really embrace that sometimes you're going to ask dumb questions. Even sometimes when you know it, it's better to ask it in a dumb way, 'cause you'll end up getting better information. You don't have to prove to everybody that you're so smart all the time. Just be willing to ask dumb questions. I kind of put that in that bucket of feeling like a failure, but it doesn't mean that you are.
I love that. That's fantastic. Thank you guys so much. And congratulations on that piece. It's fantastic. Maureen and John, you both studied history at Duke. Maureen, you were art history minor and English major. What is one example that you could give of how what you learned at Duke and what you were experiencing at the Chronicle, how those experiences may have played into what you do now? And what is a helpful takeaway for people from Duke, for Dukies looking to make career transitions, since each of you moved to the New York Times company recently, John from ESPN to The Athletic, and then Maureen from the Wall Street Journal. So a lot of questions there too, but you can answer them. Maureen, do you want to answer?
Sure. So I guess just to start out, as far as my major, I really enjoyed doing things sort of, the liberal arts curriculum. And I mean, I just think storytelling, it's like the essence of what you do. I mean, you're reporting, you're looking for stories. And I think my English major, I mean, just getting to read fun stories all the time, thinking about how you craft them. And I mean, I often say, especially about, I just wrote a book last year on WeWork. And I mean, there's stories that you find in real life you could never make. If I attempted to make up the WeWork story, I never could have. And many other things you stumble upon, like the narrative arc in what we do as reporters, when you stumble upon the right thing, is just kind of wild. So that, as far as goes, and I mean, I've come into business journalism. That's been most of my career. And, I've sort of learned business on the job. I didn't take any econ classes at Duke. The closest thing was a Marxism class. That was my econ background. But it's sort of, on some level, it would have been nice to have some of that, and I've learned it. But it's also nice to come from the outside, I think, as a journalist. Sometimes you see things that other people don't, because you're asking, as Kashmir, you just said, like the dumb question that sort of open so many doors. So I think it's been fun kind of coming at things from a different place. Okay, question number 2, Michelle.
I know, don't worry.
Career transitions.
Just a takeaway for people listening going, oh my gosh, these people are so accomplished. You know, how did they get there? What advice would they have for me? You know, obviously art history is just also full of history that you just could never make up. I mean, if you study that for 5 minutes, you go, okay, that didn't happen. Oh, yes, it did. Yeah. So, but you know, what advice would you give?
I guess, you know, the thing about journalism, there's no straight path. And I think you have to really embrace that. And, you know, I've worked at very small publications. I wound up going to journalism school after Duke, after working for a little while. And, you know, it's so hard to find your first job. I wound up working, writing about mergers and acquisitions. I had no idea what they were. I had to kind of like Google them going into my job interview and, you know, learn that on the job. It's like the path. I mean, some people get the internship in the New York Times or somewhere else right out of college, but don't worry if you don't. As I think Aaron and Kashmir said, it's like to find a niche sometimes, and sometimes it's not going to be what you think you're passionate about, and just dig deep into it and you find different ways. But I think you can really get there and sort of build your skills as you go. And there's so many different publications now, I think, that can prove as learning grounds to get you on your way to, you know, wherever you're going to go. But I think that's the one thing, I think, as opposed to a lot of other career tracks, especially, and it was especially nerve-wracking coming right out of Duke when people have these big jobs right away and you're like, you know, begging to get someone coffee in a newsroom. But so it's a different path, but you learn so much as you go. And I think you have to be ready to kind of meander.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good. And no matter what, and that's the great thing now is there's so many platforms and pretty much anything you could possibly be interested in is out there for you to write about, to learn about. Mergers and acquisitions. So you dove into that knowing nothing about it?
Literally Googling it on the way in.
That wasn't a disaster.
It not too badly. And someone gave me a book, Barbarians at the Gate. And I highly recommend it. I read it. I was like totally sort of really intrigued by it. And I mean, sometimes these niche publications too, you make sources. I think sort of you dig into something, no one else really cares about it as much. And like these are sort of some of your first sources that you develop really long-term relationships with, and they'll tell you, you know, it'll open doors to so many other worlds too. You start building up this trust with people.
I have a story kind of like that about you know, taking chances and raising your hand to do something that you don't really know anything about. When I was at Sports Illustrated, the managing editor came down to the bullpen where all the reporters were and said, "Does anybody here know anything about hockey?" And I looked around and nobody else raised their hand, so I raised mine. And my knowledge of hockey pretty much consisted of having been to some minor league games in Richmond, Virginia, you know, years before. And I wound up covering the Stanley Cup Finals 2 years in a row and being on the road, you know, as a hockey writer. So something I would never have been able to do if I hadn't raised my hand, faked my way through it at times. Hockey's, by the way, a great sport to cover if you don't know anything, because the people are very, very nice. So so anyway, yeah, I related to that. Quick thing on the major, I was a history major. And one of the things when you asked that question earlier that I was thinking about is sometimes history unfolds in front of you and you don't realize it's happening. I covered Coach K's first 4 years. And I, you know, as I told David when I met him a few weeks ago, I'm the guy who covered the bad teams. So I learned a lot from that. It's highly amazing to look back on it as we've all done, you know, in the past year. Yeah, you know, I learned, you know, in dealing with Coach K in those days, how to deal with a cranky coach. The important lesson of when you have a one-on-one, don't ask the hard question first, because I did that and it did not go well. The legacy at the Chronicle that I inherited was we covered Duke sports impartially. right? And the coaches, especially Coach K, didn't really like that when they were not winning. So yeah. And then to your question about advice for career moves, for me, it comes down to embrace change. I was part of Sports Illustrated a few years after the hockey endeavor. I was part of Sports Illustrated's early digital initiatives, and I had a boatload of ideas, and I met with the managing editor who at the time who said, that's not journalism, it's just web stuff. So that was when I knew I needed to go somewhere else. So ESPN the magazine was looking to create a web presence, so I raised my hand there. Was lucky enough to get hired, and I was at ESPN for a number of years. And there was a point at ESPN too where there were a group of us who were advocating that we at least study and consider putting the entire site behind a paywall. And ESPN Bristol management kind of patted us on the head and said, go off and play in your sandbox. We're not doing that anytime soon. So eventually I found my way to The Athletic, where we like paywalls. We think they're smart. So embrace change. And if you get the sense they're not listening, there's always another sandbox to play in. Oh, and one last thing. Look for the people in the organization who like ideas and are willing to listen to ideas, to ideas and take a chance on you.
Oh, I like that. Oh my gosh. So many people don't remember that. I would say the first 3 years of Coach K after Bill Foster. Oh, people were like, I remember adults, I was not an adult at the time, saying, who cares how you spell his name? No one's going to remember it. He's going to be gone. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny thinking back on it. And, my memory was, it wasn't, one more losing season and he would have been in big trouble. I don't think it was as close as Jay Billis has, said it was, but it was not, he wasn't looking good there after 3 years.
I thought it was perfect that Seinfeld was in the audience at Cameron, because Seinfeld famously has said that they would have been canceled like this. They went so long without an audience. And now Seinfeld is a classic, right? So they're showing Seinfeld. I'm like, this is perfect. He was just like that. All right, give people a chance. I love that idea. So big ideas, people are willing to change. Very good advice. Thank you so much. Ashley, you were Spanish and pre-med at Duke. How did you end up in branding and marketing? I love this.
Oh, man.
Isn't that great? It's so fun. So please tell us about what you're doing right now at the New York Times and, a project that you're working on, and throw in some advice.
Yeah, so I didn't have a linear path at all, not traditional. I took a bunch of pivots. I'll try and walk you very quickly through all of the pivots and reasons that I made moves. So Spanish and pre-med. Pre-med, because I was a goody two shoes and listening to my parents, and they wanted me to be the first doctor in the family. And so I took all of the sciences, MCAT, everything. Spanish was because I'm from Atlanta, and I went to a small international school from kindergarten through senior year in high school, Atlanta International School. So I learned Spanish all my life. And I needed a balance with all of the sciences that I was taking on. So that was my balance, to get a bit of humanities in there, and not just always be in a chem lab. So basically we get to senior year. I have taken my MCAT. I'm pulling together my application for medical school. And I now know it was anxiety, but I felt like I was gonna have a heart attack at 21 years old. And I panicked and I told my parents, I'm not going. I'm not finishing this application. I'm not doing it. And that was a very tough conversation. They were very upset with me for a long time. So I graduated with nothing, and which was tough. But I had to figure out what my actual plan is. And that's when the agency kicked in for me. I went home to Atlanta for a year. I worked at TBS, Turner Studios, where they make the TV shows, just to make money, so I could move out of my parents' house and figure out what I was going to do with my life. All the things that I should have done while I was at Duke, right? While I was working, I realized my entire resume was healthcare. I'd done all these shadowing and more clinical medicine style things. So I started to look into like what I could do to pivot and like build a career around that wasn't actual medicine. And that's when I got wind of Masters in Public Health programs. So I applied to a bunch of public health programs and got accepted into Emory's program for Masters in Public Health. While I did it, it was a safe bet for me at the time because I knew I could still use an MPH and then go into medical school if I wanted to. But I also knew that it would expose me to different careers. And all of this to say, I think I like kind of fell for my parents, like nudging me to be a doctor because I wanted to make an impact on people's lives. And I thought the only way you could do that is like help their health outcomes. And I didn't realize that like, as a marketer, I do that every day, right? So I was at Emory and took some initiative and met up with an alum that was working at Deloitte in their public sector. They had a huge engagement of consultants at the CDC. And so I was just trying to learn and figure out like what I could do with this degree. The alum told me about an internship opportunity with Deloitte. I applied and luckily got it. And so I interned at Deloitte and then worked there. I took off a day to graduate from Emory and then went back to work the next day, and they gave me a full-time offer. I thought I was going to be doing more health policy style things, but ultimately I was doing a lot of strategy and analytical work, balanced scorecard stuff. Listen, being a management consultant straight out of college is you learn a lot. I learned how to be client facing, how to be collaborative, how to work on timelines and on budgets. And it really buttoned me up as a business professional, but I wasn't super passionate. And I had a little bit of a quarter life crisis. I've always been into art and creating things. And I felt like just me being in spreadsheets wasn't fulfilling. A family friend of mine told me to apply to a nonprofit program called Management Leadership for Tomorrow. It's an 18-month program that basically was a boot camp that you did after work to see if you wanted to get an MBA and what you wanted to do in the next phase. I did that program and it really clarified and exposed me to a bunch of different career options, one of which was management consulting. I could have gone back into it. But I got wind of brand management, and that's when I was like, oh, I'm getting my MBA and I'm going to the top school that I can for marketing. Luckily got accepted to Kellogg at Northwestern and didn't really look back. Again, I had family friends that were saying, you're leaving money on the table, like go back into consulting or like go into finance, go to Wall Street, right? But I knew that all of the things that I liked about consulting, strategy, analytics, fast-paced, working with collaborative teams. You did all of that in brand management, but then I got to create TV commercials, new products on shelves, packaging, work with consumers. So I loved it. When I was at Kellogg, I interned at P&G and then actually moved to Cincinnati for 2 years full-time. And I got to work on 2 women's brands, Tampax and Secret, the women's deodorant brand, and had a ball. It was great. And it was amazing to market to women, but I knew I needed another pivot because I'm from Atlanta. I went to school in Chicago, love New York City, love fashion, and everything in my life in Cincinnati was online at this point. And I was managing the e-commerce portfolio for Secret. So how do you sell deodorant online on Amazon? And that's when I realized like, wow, I need to pivot and learn how to be a digital marketer because that's where things are going. And this was like circa 2013. So worked my own network. And then I moved to New York to work in fashion. So I worked at Gilt.com and Ralph Lauren and really learned how people make purchase decisions and what they buy online. And P&G actually taught me how to pretty much sell anything, I'll be honest. And then there were a few reorgs at Ralph Lauren, a lot of leadership change. The team that I was on dissolved. So a recruiter reached out to me about the New York Times. I never thought I would work in media, but it sounded like a really cool opportunity. It was digital. It had a startup-esque culture, but with the comfort of like a legacy brand. And I signed up. And so I've been at the Times almost 6 years now, and I've had so many different entrepreneurial roles while I've been there. One was I led the student business. So how to get college students globally to subscribe and not cancel. That was fun for a while. And then we shifted our strategy a bit, and I've basically built the growth and acquisition marketing disciplines at the New York Times. So you all will probably see like any of the ads that are on Instagram stories, Facebook, display banners that get you to subscribe. That's what my team does. And now I'm building product marketing at the New York Times. It's a new function. And it's basically like a team of marketers that sit within the newsroom side by side with all of the tech organizations. So product design, engineers, data analysts, researchers, consumer researchers, and they figure out what the new products, experiences, and features to launch within our product, within our site, to get people to keep reading, to come back, and ultimately subscribe. So that was a lot. I know. The thing that I'm most excited about right now is a project that someone on my team is managing, subscriber-only newsletters. It's one of our first launches. So if anyone on the call is a subscriber, go to nytimes.com/newsletters and look at the slate of subscriber-only newsletters that are free to you because you subscribe. And it really is, we're trying to build more value in the subscriber state. And it's been really cool to work with the editorial side of the company, which I rarely get to do, to bring this to life, right? And now it's in everyone's inboxes. So it was really gratifying to work on that.
Man, you are a walking story about how, pivot, right? That you were so right.
Yeah.
That's so, okay. So we're going to do Eric and hear from him, and then we're going to do rapid fire and then the Q&A. So I got to get to Eric. You also, thank you, Ashley. You, Eric, were PPS, public policy major at Duke, just like I was. Please describe your role as deputy editor at the news desk. How did your summer internship at the News and Observer help prepare you for a career in the trenches in journalism? And then what do you recommend students do to stand out? And what has knocked your socks off? Go, Eric.
Yeah, so in my role at the Times, I help manage the team that edits the homepage, sends out the news alerts that get your mobile app buzzing, as well as some email and other things like that. So we really are, on a day-to-day basis, sort of just staring at the news, staring at what's breaking, what stories we're publishing, and figuring out what we're going to put on the homepage, what those headlines are going to say, what alerts we're going to send out, and trying to sort of take it all in and then figure out like what's the hierarchy and what's the sort of importance and what's the right way to say it. And like everybody else, I had kind of a winding path to get here, but during my between junior and senior year of school, I did intern at the News and Observer in Raleigh, and that really gave me just like a grounding in the fundamentals of journalism. How to write a lead, how to write an obit, how to pick up the phone and make a bunch of cold calls until you get the information you need. And just really working in that environment with experienced journalists kind of gave me those hard skills that I could then use as a base to kind of try and make it in this industry. At the Times, newspaper journalism experience is very valued. So that's one piece of advice that I would have for people is if you get the opportunity to work at a newspaper, it's really going to give you that broad base of skills that you can build on at a place like the Times. I've been lucky enough to work I've been at the Times for 10 years now. And, I started as an intern working overnight and kind of worked my way through it. But one piece of advice I would have is to say yes to new experiences that you may not think are right for you, because I remember early in my career at the Times, I was offered the opportunity to sort of specialize in mobile. And, someone telling me at the time, it's 2013, everyone's on their phones now, 1/3 of all of our page views are on a phone. And I was sort of thinking, well, that sounds kind of technical. I don't know if I can do that. And it was like the best thing that ever happened to me, because not enough people were focused on that at the time. So, like others have said, everyone else is zigging. How can you zag? How can you fill a niche that somebody else isn't doing? But then I've had great opportunities to work collaboratively with product managers, designers, developers, people who you may not sort of think of when you think of the New York Times as being a sort of typical New York Times job, all those jobs are out there. So if you're interested in, kind of coming at journalism from a slightly different angle, like that stuff is really needed right now. But doing that also just sort of opened my eyes to the broader picture of what the operation does and needs. And so I would just really encourage everybody to think through all those different kinds of roles, expose yourself to people who do all those kinds of things, learn about different roles. And, I sort of came at it thinking, oh yeah, I want to be a reporter because that's kind of the thing that you think about, but there's a lot else out there.
You're a reporter. You're a lot of things, but you're also that. I mean, to know a story is to tell a story, is to research a story, right? All that stuff. Do Duke people reach out to you guys before I dive into the rapid fire questions? Because I am always begging, I'm like, talk to me, call me. I will tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'll tell you all the stuff. For us, I'm always telling them, don't fake it till you make it, because it will be a disaster. You've got to work in small markets and cover those small stories, because you will be found out in a hot minute, and you don't want that to happen. But we're talking about different chances that people are taking in terms of hockey, mergers and acquisitions. I mean, these are critical minds looking into things, and enthusiastic people. These are not people standing in front of a green screen trying to pretend that they're a meteorologist, right? It's vast difference. Can you just tell me, anybody jump out? Have Duke people reached out to you for help?
Yes, and I'll say sometimes I'm like in awe of like the seniors. I'm like, you guys are so much like, you guys are miles ahead of where I was like then, maybe even now. So yeah, I think it's great, and I really try to do my best to talk to everybody. Good.
And the more we put ourselves out there like this, the more they can make those connections, which I love. So I always tell people, I'm like, just pay it forward. Just pay it forward. That's it. Number one tip, Kashmir, you want to tell us number one tip you would give? Anything else that you've thought of? I know you gave one, but anything else?
I guess if you're going to be a reporter, I kind of feel like you need to embrace being annoying, not abrasive, but you have to be persistent. And so, it's kind of hard to embrace that. But yeah, being annoying, being persistent, keep asking, embracing that part of yourself.
John, I loved your suggestion before about, I know something about hockey. It's pretty cool. Nice people. I could look into it. Anything else to advise people?
I spend a lot of time in my job coaching writers and editors, and what I try to steer them toward is have the tough conversations about the story up front. If you can have those conversations, build a relationship between the writer, you and your editor, or you and your writer, so that you can be honest with each other about what the story is, and where you want it to go. What's your best stuff? All those questions. Have those conversations up front. It will drastically cut down on the time that it takes on the back end.
Oh, that's great.
Practical tip.
Anybody else want to jump in before I go to the next one? Very good, quick answers, by the way.
So go ahead.
Go ahead, Maureen.
Okay, this is a quick one, and maybe fits into the next one too. But people have told me, and every news story I have to remember it, but it's like as a reporter, it's a numbers game. Like if you're going after something, you have to call like 50 people, and maybe to get to like the 2 people that are going to give you like the crazy tip. And it's like every time it's like, if you just don't go after so many, I mean, you have your sources, but like if there's a news story, like call, and like you do finally hit gold, it might take 50 calls.
Yeah. Or for me, knock on doors.
Yes.
Get yelled at, please come, get off the sidewalk. This is a public sidewalk. Fun stuff like that. Go ahead.
Can I say one thing, Michelle, which is just because I think Ashley and I are really the 2 people here representing not in the newsroom, and for people out there who are interested in media, but maybe not being a journalist and doing something else. I think I had a similar kind of winding road into the role that I'm in today. And I think it's about like trying different things, getting your foot in your door. It doesn't even have to be in media right away, but experience being a product manager or designer, as Eric was referring to, or marketing, and starting to try those different things and what works. And just, I often say, don't pick the industry, pick the thing you love doing, and then find your way into the industry that you love.
That leads us right into this. In one sentence, what's the best career advice you've ever received? Eric, you want to jump in?
Hustle.
I've got one. Follow the competence. Follow the competent. Look for the competent people, and follow them.
David, did you have an idea before we jumped on? You look like you were thinking.
I just say lean into your strengths. It's easy to think about the things that you want to be able to do better, but just see what you're good at and follow those things.
Mine would be, as someone told me, don't do the work. Kind of what Eric was saying, like, don't be a mediocre joker. Because you actually are more confident in yourself, especially early in your career, when you do the work and you know your stuff. And so you can speak up in meetings, you can deal with leaders better versus trying to like hide what you didn't do, right? So it gives you a certain confidence when you just do the work.
And then you know what a stupid question is, right? Fantastic. Then you actually know contextually what would be a stupid question. Kashmir, go ahead. You were going to say.
I said before that you should, find a niche, but I also want to say, don't get stuck inside your own bubble, especially on the reporting side. Find people who are different from you, who think differently from you, who look different from you, who make different amounts of money than you, just to make sure that you're getting a wider look at the world. And that's really, I think, important for telling universal stories.
Fantastic. I'm just looking through the rapid fires. You guys hit on so many of them. Anybody else want to jump in with something that would either be the best advice you ever got, or something that made someone stand out who got hired recently where you're like, oh my God, this is a wunderkind. Who is this kid? They came up with this, or, we got to hire them right now. Anything? Oh, our audience grew also, by the way. My husband is a troubleshooter for Eyewitness News, where I work, Channel 7. We've both been there like 24 years. Come over here and say hi, because I don't want them to see the hanging. We're in the mud room, so I don't want them to see the mess. That's Steve.
You guys are great. It's very entertaining, by the way. And I'm not a Dookie, so
He's a Duke fan.
don't tell him any.
It's all right. I'm not going to tell. But anyway,
I wanted to know of the entry-level people that you've seen, what sort of things did they do that you had a problem with that perhaps they could have corrected before they did an interview? Or what did they do in an interview or in a meet and greet that they should not have done?
Whoever let you in is very good. Go ahead. Anything? Go back to my first question of like failure and all that stuff. Anything that comes to mind?
Something super tactical. A few years ago, we had a few interns that wanted to meet with me and talk, and there was just like a handful of them that stood out to me that they didn't really have a ton prepared, and it didn't need to be like like a hardcore interview or anything, but like I felt like I was filling the gaps and having to do a lot of speaking when I wish they had just asked me whatever was on their mind. Like it was a coffee. It wasn't even anything that they were already at the Times interning. They got the internship, so make sure you're prepared and always have questions.
I would say in interviews, if you can have some constructive, critical feedback about the place or the product or whatever it is, because it really shows that you've kind of put some thought into what they need to do to improve and what you would do. And another kind of pitfall that I've seen with interviewees is kind of giving really long-winded answers so that the interviewer just, can't get to the next question. So try to keep it concise.
All right, good one. Nina, we have Q&A. I almost hit it on time. hold on. Oh, great. Okay. How has the shift towards subscription-based content impacted the way you look at what's news? And is the trend generally a positive one for journalism? How has the Times reacted to the rise of misinformation and the loss of trust among Americans for established news sources? Where do you see the most potential for a successful product by a digital media publication?
I'm happy to start, but anybody else can jump in here. I mean, I guess what I would say is I think that what's made the New York Times amazing is that it's always focused on creating exceptional journalism and following the stories wherever they lead without fear or favor. And I think that because of that, we've always created journalism that was worth paying for. And you know, for a while, the business was primarily funded through advertising when it was print and advertising was abundant, but we made the leap online. And I don't think it's changed the journalism. It's just, you know, supported what we've always done. If anything, though, I will say, you know, being at The Athletic, I think that one of the very conscious choices that the athletic team made and that other publications have made is that to get people to pay for journalism, it has to be original and it has to be differentiated. And I think in that way, what's great about subscription-based journalism is that it gives reporters and editors not only the wherewithal, but the mandate to say, go find stories that aren't being told out there that need to be told. And if we do that, you know, people will pay for it as opposed to chasing page views and clicks.
I have an example like that from yesterday where news broke in Red Sox camp, and we had, you know, one of the writers who was in Red Sox camp was debating whether he needed to go back and be part of the pack at the Trevor Story press conference, or go ahead to an original interview that no one else had about a story that no one else was doing. And so he called for my advice, and you can guess what I told him. You know, we can, you know, we don't need to be part of the pack all the time. Go for the original story.
Thank you so much for being so honest and open and coming up with some great stories about what went wrong or what went right, like incredibly right in terms of, you know, everyone pretty much here getting paid to be curious and tell stories and make friends constantly and be annoying, you know, and fight for hopefully stories about the underserved people we're not hearing stories about, and making a job out of it. Are you kidding me? We're stealing the money. It's fantastic. Do not work. Do this. It is amazing. Your life is never boring, right? Or maybe it is. No, I'm just kidding. Your life is never boring. Always learning, always. And I think that also, I tell interns who come in, they're like, how come everybody seems so young? And I say, people in their 60s, they're in their 50s. We have a couple people in their 70s. If you stay curious, that's a pretty young trait, right? Right? And humble, and you get a humble pie every single day, finding out stuff you didn't know, or asking the wrong question, or whatever you know, but that keeps you young. So there's a university feeling at places in journalism, whether it's the News and Observer, the New York Times, The Athletic, Channel 7, you know, print. And I see you guys, well, not you guys, but I see print writers all the time on the street, and it's a great university. We are always saying, great soundbite, don't bother, scary guy over there, bathroom over there, the bodega has fresh bananas. So we're always helping each other in very human ways, maybe not sharing story information, but we're sharing our, we're at work together, put it that way. Okay, thank you so much for being part of this conversation and spending tonight with me and everyone listening, including Steve and my dog. We had a raffle tonight, which is cool. And the winners of a digital subscription to the New York Times or The Athletic, Kyran Williams Roberts and Julia Zoe. Congratulations. And go Duke. So congratulations on getting that prize. You're going to definitely hear from DEMAN to coordinate getting your subscriptions. So congratulations on winning the raffle. Hopefully I didn't mess up your names. You can definitely watch anytime you want tonight's conversation on DukeDemon.com because it was recorded. And then of course, another thank you to the Chronicle. Keep up with Duke News always at DukeChronicle.com. And thank you for your time. We're right at the end. So I thank you so much. I'm humbled by who spoke today and all of the hard work that you've done to be where you are and all of the pivoting and all of the hard work you did at Duke and after. And thank you so much for helping Duke grads and continuing to pay it forward because I think that's really important that we all do that. It's a huge thing. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Thanks,
What are we going to
Michelle.
talk about next
Thanks,
week?
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.